G'day, I'm Rinku Bach, the co-founder of Control Fleet, and welcome to another edition of CtrlCast. This is a platform where we discuss the digitization of the transport and logistics space. And our operators are navigating from diesel, dust to technology, AI, and beyond. Today we have a very special guest, dear friend of mine, a wizard in the digitization space of the logistics industry, over 40 years of experience, currently the chairman of Crickmay Associates and the managing director of Drivers Bureau, Andrew Crickmay. Lovely to have you, Andrew.
Thank you, Rinka.
Let's talk Crickmay and Drivers Bureau.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to do so, Rinka. Yeah.
So, Andrew, let's take a journey back in history. Where did Crickmay start?
So Crickmay was started by my father, and he got 90% of the sawmilling industry to give him their income statements and their prices and their volumes, and then he benchmarked them against each other. So that trust that, and we still do that today, by the way, 40 years ago, if we're later. So that sort of built our understanding that if you are clever about data, that you can add a lot of value. So that's where it started, and logistics kind of builds on that, because logistics needs information to make the thing work. So that's where it all started.
So 40 years ago,
Yeah.
I mean, today we think of data aggregation, data flows, big data, and it's almost become a norm. But 40 years back, that was much different. I mean, how did you get onto data? Well, how did you what was the process of using data so early in that stage of development?
So we started with a project called the Load Accreditation Program, which was the precursor of RTMS, and we did the whole thing because we wanted PBS concessions. But it started with regulating overloading in the sugar industry. And then we realized how valuable that data was off the weighbridges at the sugar mills. So it all went into Excel spreadsheets and very manual process. Then we got a contract in 2007 when Eskom fell apart. Remember, there was all that load shedding, and we were pulled in to do that. So, you know, that's an enormous supply chain. And so we've kind of been at this data thing for a while.
Let's just quickly unpack, because you mentioned a couple of things, and I think it's worth just harping a little bit on that. You mentioned the load weight monitoring, and that became the precursor for what we know today as RTMS. So how did that evolve? I mean, that's years in the making.
So Renka, this is kind of how we understand supply chains. So we think there's value within a business, and then we think that there's a lot of value outside of a business. So I'd been the logistics manager at Mondi Forests, and payload was the thing that was keeping everyone back. We needed bigger payloads, and we needed government concessions to give us PBS concessions to get bigger payloads. So what we needed to do was to win credibility with government. So how did we do that? We basically got a whole lot of data together from the pulp mills and the sugar mills, and we benchmarked them against each other, and that brought the overloading down. And then we went to government and we said, look, we're a great shiny industry, we self-regulating. We then developed the RTMS standards, and then we said to them, on the strength of that, work with us, we want those concessions. So it was a process, because what we wanted to bring the cost of transport down, and it actually worked so much better than I ever thought it would. I mean, you've seen all the PBS vehicles running around today.
It's incredible. I mean, very few transport operators don't know or have not started an RTMS journey in terms of the accreditation and the benefit. And I think in its core, the self-regulation concept behind it, and the benefit that one should have if you're an operator that self-governs. So that all started from understanding what you should and can do with that data, and one of those facets then grew into an industry governing association or framework. And at which stage did that become a non-Crickmay tool?
So we started it with the CSIR and Forestry South Africa and the National Productivity Institute at that stage. And then we had to make a decision. We had to decide, do we keep this thing to ourselves and own the brand, or do we make it a national asset and almost give it away? And we made the decision to make it a national asset. So at that point we became a service provider, and we still provide some services certainly to the sugar industry, but then it became a national asset, and it no longer became something that we owned. Yeah. But hopefully we've made a difference in that process.
From my perspective, for sure.
Yeah.
The industry is far better because of that. I also remember, I don't know which year, you can maybe just refresh my memory, but you were one of the few double gold or platinum logistics achiever award winners for that project, wasn't it?
Yeah, so for that project we won platinum cum laude.
That's amazing.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I remember I was still very early in my career, and that was one of the reasons that we as Control Fleet also try and put ourselves out there with whatever projects, because we feel it's good that the industry can pick up on what's who's setting or who's trying and on what's happening. Yeah. So thanks for that inspiration.
Yeah.
So out of that, obviously there was then some things that I think you picked up that could have been done better out of the framework.
Yeah.
Is that sort of the initial start of Driver Bureau, or how did that start?
So Driver Bureau, again, there are these levels, as I say. I felt that, so I took a break, my son got ill, and I took a break for a year. And when I got back, I looked at the industry and I thought, let me start something new, because my job was being filled by, was already being filled by someone else. So I thought, where can I really add value in this supply chain? And I just felt that the driver is the guy, he's your principal source of risk, and he's the guy driving your assets. He's the guy that actually adds value. And a lot of my RTMS clients were saying to me, we're battling with driver decision making, judgment error. And then I thought, okay, right, let me have a crack at how do I unlock some value here at that level? And that's where Driver Bureau started, Rinko. And
a massive task, and probably the most top of mind for all transport operators and also consignees. So you embarked on this journey. How did you start? Where did you what was the first step?
So I was inspired by this movie. Do you know the movie Moneyball? Have you watched Moneyball?
Yeah.
Okay, so there was a guy who changed the baseball industry completely, and there's a beautiful line there. And the guy says to old Brad Pitt, he says to him, in the baseball industry, there's a fundamental misunderstanding on how to manage talent. And I believe that in the driver space, that the entire industry is making a fundamental error in how we manage talent. So what I did was I went to see, so I thought to myself, okay, who's the best person that works in this space? And it turns out that in high-performing sport, judgment error is everything. So Clive Woodward, who won the World Cup, Rugby World Cup in 2003, he says, give me an extra half a second in my midfield, and he says, I create 8 meters of space. So he worked with a woman called Dr. Cheryl Calder, who's a sports scientist in Stellenbosch. And I went to her and I said to her, Cheryl, can we, will this work in yeah. So we started with the product, and but
was there already a product?
Yes, it was a product, but it's basically a computer-based product, mainly aimed at it's a computer-based thing, and a lot of people use it. Formula One drivers use it. All sorts of sportsmen, all over. Any else also used it. So she has got a tremendous track record. So I took this tech, and I thought, I was very proud of myself. I thought, now we're gonna hammer it. But you know, all these things, it's always much, a good idea is, you know, it's just the start, you know. And I realized that that there was so much more that I was missing. It's not just about the hand-eye reaction. If you think about driver, what affects driver attitude, what affects driver performance, I realized that there's what the guy believes is important. How he's managed is important. So I spent a lot of time talking to shop stewards, and the one guy said to me, imagine two operations. The one I'm yelled at and I'm screamed at and I'm shouted at by the controller, and another one, controller's tough, but he's fair. He says, you tell me which operation is going to have better fuel consumption and better accident record. So they're the other aspects, okay. Renko. So it took us about 8 years to get this thing to get a proper proof of concept.
Good.
Yeah.
So component of existing tech, which is more training orientated, eye-hand coordination.
Yeah. So there's a couple of components. The one is an assessment component, and the other one is the training component. So that's the RGIM component. So we've created almost like an ecosystem, and to that data, we also add other data like, you know, almost like psychological data. What do you think? What's questions around the risk profile? So we get a more complete human side. What we did is we put the program in place, and then we said, okay, let's see, does it actually work? Then we pulled in the telematics data, and then it was like turning a light on. You put that data, the human data, together with the telematics data, and you see what you get.
Amazing.
And that's what I'm saying. We're making a fundamental error, because telematics data is largely, it's retrospective. You put our VPJ data together and you start to understand why the stuff's happening. Okay. You then become proactive. So Renko, we can see drivers change their behavior in 20 seconds. The light will go on. The guy just, I didn't realize that, you know.
It's incredible.
Yeah. So you know, I think we, you know, at that level, we now, I think we also test. So what I like about the Logistics Achiever Awards is that you can test your thinking, and you really get guys to get under your skin. And so we won gold on that one as well, so, which I think is a stamp of approval. We're on the right way. Yeah, thanks, man.
Let's make it practical. Yeah. So you've got this, the driver bureau per se gets fed with different data sources. There's a component that obviously it becomes practical training, but before that, you know, it's fed. How does a transport operator, if it is a transport operator that starts, how do they get going? How do you onboard? So
what we do is there are basically two steps to it. So the one step is just to do the assessment. You know, a transporter would cycle his drivers through the assessment. We need them for about 45 minutes in front of a PC. So it would either be a PC or a tablet. And out of that, we feed in the telematics data and any other data that we can find on the you know, fuel consumption as an example. And then what we do is we use AI to analyze that data, and then we feed it back to the driver on a tablet. We need a 10-inch tablet. A cell phone, we don't like working with. It fries your brain. And then certain drivers with low score or RGIM scores, we would then train so that they get a tablet. And every operation is slightly different. Some guys, they'll do it when the guy comes back from a trip, and he'll have a debriefing and he'll do 10 minutes of RGIM training. And that 10 minutes, it's our gym, so you'll do your 10 minutes of our gym training. Okay. Other guys will take a tablet on a trip. You'll take a tablet for a week, and whenever he's in the queue, then he'll do his 10 minutes a day.
And that feeds the database continuously.
That'll feed the database, yeah.
Builds up the profile.
It builds up the profile, yeah.
And the operator then uses that to make decisions based on where additional training or risk indicators point out.
Yeah, so, and it's used in a number of ways. So you might identify some drivers who have got, you might have a very weak peripheral vision. So when the trainer sits with a guy, just takes that report and he has a better insight into that driver. Renke, you think about it. I'm a driver trainer. I've got 2 driver trainers. One driver trainer knows that you've got a peripheral vision problem. He's going to treat you differently to if he's training you and he doesn't know what your profile looks like. At the end of the day, every decision is made from what your eye sees and what your brain interprets and the signal sent to your hand. That's first principles. You know, Elon Musk talks about first principles. That's first principles. So we work at what's affecting that thing. Could be attitude, could be, you know, all the things I've spoken about.
And the fact that you manage what you can measure,
yeah,
and that is where you can reflect that into data.
Yes.
And manage that. And that's why I love the issue and how you got to this point.
Yeah.
You know, from 40 years of understanding a industry context problem,
yeah,
you know, out of the sugar mills and load, weight monitoring and management, and what the data was telling you.
Yeah.
And then getting to where you are now, again, another perfect example of what the industry is needing.
Yeah.
And where data is required to solve that problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that we can, you know, tackle probably one of the biggest challenges in our supply chain.
Yeah.
Which is one of the fundamental players, the transport industry, and inside that transport space, the driver.
Yeah.
So what's next? Like, what is the plan from where you are today?
Are you talking about from a driver bureau
Yes.
point of view or from a... So, as I said, it took us about 8 years to adjust this thing to the industry. So we've just put our latest upgrade goes in 1st of September. And we're just getting our processes right, getting this machine so that it's easy to implement, because implementation is what kills most software. We want this thing easy to implement, and yeah, we're looking for some we're talking to some channel partners, and we'd like to put it into the market through channels, and yeah, let this thing do its job, you know.
Excellent.
Yeah.
From our context, Control Fleet, it's an operational tool. It's where, you know, operators are scheduling and planning. There's a driver app, but for production purposes.
Yes.
How do you levitate on that data, or what insight does that operational level of systems provide into your driver bureau?
So the way that I see it is that, you know, everyone talks about working in your business and working on your business. So you work in the business because you're operational, you've got to get the stuff out. You know, so most people are stressed working on. What we do is, from an analytical point of view, is we help you work in your business, on your business, not in your business. So that's when you take and then look at the data, see what the data is telling you, and you're using that knowledge just to see where the risks are, and then start to tweak where the problems are.
So our source of data could potentially be fed into your bureau to help, you know, complete the picture of the driver's profile.
Yeah, from a driver point of view, 100%, yeah.
Okay, so Andrew, tell me, another very interesting concept that the data tells you, and you know, the overlay of the telematics versus, you know, the assessments, is the Dunning-Kruger effect. Mm. You've got extensive exposure to that. Just unpack that for us.
Yeah, so it's a theory that came out of Cornell University, and it says that most unskilled people overestimate their ability. And I've found that it doesn't just extend to unskilled people. So I'll give you 2 examples. So the one, let's say I'm a transport operator and I've got 10 depots, and I'm the managing director. I think that we manage these drivers really, really well. So if I could give you data that ranks all your depots against each other and tells you how the drivers are experiencing the management, you're going to go, yeah, I didn't know that. So what's it going to do? It's going to change your behavior. Okay, at a driver level, we found that, okay, so psychomotor ability, your psychomotor ability is even your psychomotor ability, your ability to react, make decisions, starts to fall at about age of 28. So we've got, I don't know, we've got 30,000 data points. And that thing is falling all the time. But the scary thing is, what you believe about you is not falling. So that gap is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. In fact, happened to me. So when I was going to do the assessment, the AGM assessment, I thought to myself, oh, I'm going to rock this thing. I used to play squash, and I rated myself as a squash player. Rinko, I got such a fright. And I realized, geez, I'm slow. I'm not seeing things in my peripheral. So it changed me in an instant. So now I know that I'm slow. So I'm much more cautious on the road. I now leave a much bigger gap. When I stop at a stop street, I turn my head, I'm looking for stuff because I'm not seeing stuff. And I didn't know that. So that Dunning, what we find is that closing that gap, that's really, really important things, to close the gaps, to have a solid understanding of your own ability. And once you've got an understanding of your ability, only then will you change, because otherwise, and also training. Why would you receive training when you think you're good? So this Dunning-Kruger effect is a it's a fundamental thing at a driver level and a management level.
Super powerful.
No, it's cool.
And so self-awareness, but also the operator being aware of how to custom that specific training and approach to,
Yes.
a pool of drivers that might traditionally have just been managed as the same.
Yeah, 100%. Because you're all human beings, we're different. So you might be very susceptible to fatigue. So if I'm a wise manager and I knew that, well, then I'm going to put you on a route where I'm not playing you to your weakness, I'm playing you to your strength.
Yeah, it's truly amazing the kingpin of what the data is providing. You mentioned you build your own platform, so your own technology, and you've incorporated AI in terms of how the data is being used and managed and visualized.
Yep.
You want to unpack that? How does it work?
So Rinko, we've got, as you say, we've got our own platform, but we also use the Crickmay backbone for our analytics and the machine learning. So I don't know better guys to use than them. So that's how I've structured the business.
Yeah. I mean, that's stunning how you've got these specialized, call it, teams that are now working together. You've got the driver bureau, technology, data as the means to it, and now you've got the Crickmay with years of experience.
Yeah.
You've been instrumental in impacting the industry of what that team's done, and they're leveraging that database.
Yeah.
So if I'm a transport operator, where do I live? Do I use both platforms, or do I, what dashboard am I looking at?
You'll be using a driver's bureau, white labeled dashboard. Just the back end is run by the Crickmay team.
Okay, lovely.
Yeah.
And typically that's where I get my, either custom, or what type of assessments, what type of reports would an operator typically look at?
So he'll get his own. Let's say I'm running 5 depots. I'll get a company overview, and then I'll get information on an individual driver, and I'll also get alerts. So, for drivers, we find that the eyes are almost a window to the person's health. So we often have guys who just those scores just are fallen, and then we get an alert to say, well, okay, go and investigate further. The person might be depressed, or person's ill, or something's wrong, So that's how we use it.
Yeah. No, it is really a kingpin of address, concern, opportunity that you solve addressing in the industry.
Yeah.
What has the uptake been? What is the endorsement, the support of the industry in abroad been with your initiative?
So Rinko, we've got to the edge. We're doing this for about 8 years, and we wanted to get it really, really right before we put the hammer down. So our main client has been Sasol Mining, and they drive millions of kilometers underground. It's a world that you and I just don't know, but it's a huge amount of machinery and buckies and things that go on underground. And we've seen there's two levels of it. We've we see about a 14 to 20% reduction in telematics incidents, just with the assessment and the feedback. And then if you do the training, that will go up depending on how much training you do. So on 90 minutes a year, we're seeing about a 28% reduction in telematics. And if you align that to fuel and that kind of stuff, you know that it's a big impact.
So what do you mean with reduction of telematics? Is it issues or?
So what we do, we've taken the incidents, so harsh braking, harsh acceleration, divided it by expressed it per 100 kilometers. So if you and then if you do the assessment of 14 to 20% reduction of those incidents, the incidents come down, and if you do the training, then the incidents also come down, but by a greater margin.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And this is the results specifically out of the Sasol engagement.
Yeah. We also did a study some years ago with Unitrans, and it was a small study. We had about 35 drivers, and they trained consistently, quite lots of training, and we saw a 55% reduction in incidents.
Incredible.
It's incredible.
So there is this sweet spot of, as frequent as possible in terms of training and assessment.
Yeah.
Feeds the database.
Yeah, so assessments once a year.
Okay.
That's all you need. And then the more training you do, the better. But not everyone needs training, because why would you train a person whose skills are good anyway? Okay,
so Andrew, obviously one of the key components is, and could be seen as a bit of a hurdle, for operators in the fast-moving environment, but the time that's needed from the driver to do the training. How have you seen, operators navigating through that?
So Renko, it's the old 80-20 rule. 20% of your effort gives you 80% of your results. So the 20% is do the annual assessment. It's absolutely no hassle. All we need 45 minutes of the operator's time once a year. And they're not all at once, just cycle them through the business, easy. The more difficult part is the training. Where to find time to do 10 minutes of training every day during operations. Now that's a challenge. So some operators, just the way they work makes it easy. So do it. But I would focus on what's easy, and that's the assessments, and you're going to get a lot of benefit out of it.
And I guess you're also going to focus again on the 20-80 principle of who needs training.
100%, yeah. 100%, Renko, yeah.
And then the feeding of the telematics data into the platform, is that easy? Is it something that you as driver bureau helps and puts in place for an operator, and then it continues as a process, or how does that work?
So we do it via API, and then it's if the data is coming in, we have the permission of the operator and the driver. Then the system's there to be used as and when it's needed. And the operator might want a monthly report or a weekly report. It's all there.
Is there a size of fleet that is ideal, maybe too small? I mean, this is not typically transport operators that want to get into their own fleet and get going.
So Ringo, we found that a minimum of 50 is worth. It's a lot of. It's as much effort to do 5,000 operators at Sasol as it is to do a fleet of 100. So we found about 50 is the absolute minimum we do.
Okay. You mentioned Crickmay gets involved with the project.
Yes.
How do they start? Is that on-site, scoping assessment of what needs to be done? Is the implementation quite light touch? What does Crickmay do in the process?
So what they'll do is they will exactly that, do an on-site visit so that we understand we understand what management needs, what are the problems, and then we scope that out. And then it's a very simple project plan, and then we launch and off we go. So we've made it very, very simple.
Excellent. Tell me, and Andrew, you've also launched the accountability scorecard.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit, what does that do?
Okay, so Rinko, that's a Crickmay project, and as I explained to you, data has got values at different levels. So we've got driver level, the RTMS was an industry level. We also work within companies, within a company, you know, where cars hasn't got all its data in the right place. So Jacques Greef from Optics the other day said the biggest problem operators face is that their data's in different places. So that's at a company level. To me, one of the questions you sent to me in our prep, as we prep for this, is what's a good logistics system? And a good logistics system, in my mind, is a logistics system where the consignor, where the cargo owner, has an interest in how his subcontractors perform. Because the transporter is a meat in a sandwich. Unless he's got support at the loading site and support at the offloading site, and a level playing field, he's got his back to the wall. And we saw it in PBS. It was the timber industry, Mondi, Sappi, the consignors that drove the introduction of PBS, because they understand that the more efficient their transporters are, the more sustainable they are and the lower their rates, which is what we've achieved. You know, you've got other industries where they just bang the transporter on the head with a hammer and try and force the rates down. And that's not sustainable. And we're living in a country, Rinko, where this mafia-style business is growing stronger and stronger. I mean, you see the guys cutting the railway lines, electricity lines to keep the trucks going. So the consignors of our industry need to be accountable for the supply, for how those supply chains operate. So RTMS is really evolved into compliance for transporters. This is compliance for cargo owners, and that's what I believe. If we want to unlock more value, that we need something like that. Whether it's accountability score or something else, you know, I don't really mind, but the industry needs it. Otherwise, we're going to stagnate, and slowly inflation will catch us. We'll lose the good transporters, and we'll be left with a mafia state.
Yeah, I mean, it's so relevant. But driver bureau also then underpins a lot of what that accountability points to, doesn't it?
It's almost accountability at a driver level, isn't it? We're also trying to make the driver more accountable for his own performance, so understand his own, his own makeup. So in a way, it's accountability at a driver level. So yeah, we're seeing this layered approach. Funny enough, using the same data, because the same telematics data is used at all those levels. So it's interesting, eh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, all those years of what you've achieved, and where, you know, the projects you've embarked on, and understanding the nuts and the bolts in the industry from a helicopter view, but down to the level, for example, like now of the driver.
Yeah.
That digitization and what the data tells us and how to use it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I think what you're doing here is not just exactly what the industry needs, but it's also the right time.
Yeah.
Talk about timing. How do you find the endorsement from the regulators in the industry in terms of this initiative for the driver bureau? Is there a lot of support? Is there a lot of influence?
No, we haven't really looked at government or looked at regulation, or we're going straight to the customers. We are finding some interest at a consignor level. Because ultimately a lot of them are worried about reputational risk. The Mine Health and Safety Act has just changed, which is putting more emphasis on mines taking ownership of what's going on in their transport. And at the end of the day, the risk is at a driver level. That's where the risk is. So there is an interest at that level saying, can we have some visibility on what's going on at a driver level?
Okay, good. Practically, transport wants to get involved. They make contact with your team, get that scoping session, and that's how they can, initially get what needs to be involved, what data they need to share. Obviously, using your platform, the training. When do transporters typically expect some sort of result in terms of reporting and trends of what's being accumulated?
Yeah, so as soon as we've got sort of 30, 40, 50 drivers through the system, you'll start to get some data. But a lot of the value is delivered immediately as that driver starts to realize, I'm weak in this area. It's an awareness thing. So we found a lot of the drivers' trains change dramatically, and then some drivers don't. They couldn't care. But we want to affect a significant amount of drivers who do care. And you'll find, if we look at the stats we've done, is that most drivers actually do care, and it's the outliers that don't. So I hope that answers your question.
Yes, I don't know. On that note of drivers in the sector, I think there's a lot of misconception about where the driver market is in our region. I think there's perceptions of a skewed sort of approach from drivers that are either being over-regulated or under-regulated. What's your opinion about the state of our drivers in the industry as a broad?
I think there's some transporters that are really good at managing their drivers. I mean, they can operate. We've got one of the highest accident rates in the world. That you look at the stats of some of the companies, they're really, really good. So we've got these outliers really, really good, and then on average not so good, and then and I think as a country, I think we're very poor at managing our workforces. I think that we've not been a great nation at doing that.
Well, that's why the timing of what you're doing is never been as relevant as now.
Yeah, thank you.
So we're getting to a part of the discussion where we ask the same questions to all our visitors, and I want you to be bold. And the first question is about freight forecast. Taking a glimpse into the future, the foreseeable 1 to 2 years of how you see the state of the industry evolving, especially in the digitalization where you are working.
So Rinka, I think that our industry is going to be at the tail end of what I call these forces. So you've got climate change coming at one hell of a rate, and that's going to be a big disruptor. You've got and that's going to mean water changes, storms, very disruptive things. You've got these geopolitical problems that are other forces. I think getting closer to the digitalization thing, you're going to have requirements from European markets, certainly, on closer compliance to climate change and that sort of stuff. Like there's this new PCAF reporting on carbon. I think that's what we're going to see. So I think we're going to see greater pressure to try and manage this stuff, although it's probably a bit late.
And to the counter of that, freight foe, the untruth story, the misperception.
So I just watch with interest. There's this lot of talk about these ecosystems, and it's true. One needs this collaboration. So I watch it with interest because I think that these ecosystems only work when there's trust, and when they work best when there's no vested interest in these things. So I'm watching with great interest to see how these play out, because I think structurally there's a challenge in some of these infrastructures, because I don't think you can run an infrastructure when you have skin in the game. So I might be wrong, but So I think that question will be answered in the next 3 or 4 years.
Something that I really enjoy, a quote, is the rate of digitization, in many cases also a bit of the AI trend, is directly correlated and linked to the rate of trust. And what you're doing now in terms of driver bureau and an industry problem needs to be done exactly like I think you said now, you know, a neutral, repeatable entity that is not subjective in any way in terms of a result that can be achieved by this. Yeah. In sort of that closing, what would you say is the main purpose drive, and what you really are going to put your next year or two fully into the drivers bureau, and what that purpose statement that you really live by?
A drivers bureau. We're obsessed with at Crickmay and at drivers bureau. We are obsessed with adding value. So we just want to add value at these different levels where people want us, and we'll go where we need it. And I believe that from a drivers bureau point of view, there's a real need, because I think people have been missing how to manage those drivers and to manage the risk properly. Yeah.
Good. Before we get to the rapid fire round, given the fact 40 years of experience, you've seen a lot of the digitization life cycles. What would you tell an aspiring digitization entry into the market? Either companies building their own tech, or maybe even just entities that are in their digitization journey on digitizing themselves. Any takeaways you'll leave them with? 2.
I think that South Africa is a wonderful country, Rinko. Yes, do logistics in South Africa is just the most wonderful thing, because there's just such scope. We're a modern economy, and a small business can make a big difference. And if we throw a pebble in the water, there's a ripple. So the one is just you're in the right place. It's just so exciting here. And the other thing is that I think that with AI, so Jace, who runs the Crickmay business, he always says to me, don't worry about AI. What's your data policy? And your data policy hinges largely on your digitalization, because you can't use the power of AI until you've got decent data to work with. And I think decent data means digitizing things properly.
Well said. Rapid round fire.
Yes.
This just requires one-word answers, if needed, only a yes or no.
Yes.
First one, if one word you'd use to describe today's supply chain.
Volatile.
Finish the sentence. Good logistics starts with?
The consignor.
One metric you should never ignore when analyzing data.
You've got to have a measure for how clean that data is, Rinko.
One technology trend that every transporter should be watching?
AI.
Good. Thank you. Andrew, it's really been a pleasure having you here.
Rinko, it's been great, man.
Thank you for sharing all this wisdom and the impact you've had in the industry over all these years, and this new chapter. It's truly relevant, very exciting. And we're going to keep a close eye on how this evolves.
Rinko, it's been a privilege, and I call you the Jongosi, the young bull who's pulling in the amongst the trek oxen there, and you're doing fantastic work, and it's been a privilege to be on your show. Thank you.
That's a wrap for another edition of CtrlCast. And truly gaining a lot of insight in somebody that has spent so many years building up experience in the digitization of the supply chain, and amongst that now a new chapter within the driver space. Speaking about a topic that the industry desperately needs, and one that we will surely be following as it evolves and progresses. Stay tuned for the next episode of CtrlCast as we continue to unpack this digital realm and how operators are moving from dust to AI and beyond. Thank you.